Yo, what it do, man? It's your boy LP, man. We turned up and we ain't turning down no time soon, man. We are on the Trap Plan Radio and we gonna talk about relationship challenges. You know what I'm saying? Challenges that we have in relationships. All of us, we experience we have a degree of challenges that we experience in relationships. Nobody's relationship is perfect. A lot of times we like to, how could I put it? We kind of flex and we kind of front and act like we got our relationships all together. But for the most part, we are having challenges in our relationships. We struggle in our relationships. But the question is, why? You're like, okay, man, why is this? You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about it. So first thing first, you know what I'm saying? Whenever we have our relationship with our significant other, we tend to go into the relationship with the wrong mentality. LP, what do you mean? What do you mean we go into it with the wrong mentality? Well, what I mean by that is this. We go into our relationships with a mindset of, what can this person do for me? What can this person add to me? And because we have that mentality, we have unfortunate, unrealized expectations. Because again, we went into the relationship thinking, what can this person do for me? What can they add to me? As opposed to going into the relationship, what can I do for them and what can I add to them? I want you to think about that for a second. Whenever you entered into relationship with the person that you're in a relationship with, did you honestly go into that relationship with a mentality of, what can I add to them and what can I do for them? Did you go into that relationship with a mindset of, what needs can I meet? No, that's not it. We went into the relationship because we wanted to get needs met. And because we want to get needs met, as soon as that individual don't meet our needs, we threw it everything. We throwing our hands up. It's all over. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because you're not meeting my needs. You get what I'm saying? So we have to change that perspective. And I'm going to tell you, it's hard for us to go into the relationship with that perspective, simply because many of us, and this is what I want to primarily talk about today, it's hard for us to go into a relationship with that mentality of meeting needs and what can I bring, what can I add. A lot of us, we struggle with that mentality because we struggle, that caused us to have an overall struggle in our relationship. And the reason why we have that overall struggle in our relationship is because of the overall struggle that we have within ourselves. Well, what do you mean by that, LP? Well, what I mean by that is this. We haven't mastered the art of singleness. We haven't mastered the art of being single. But yet we trying to master the art of being in a relationship. I'm going to say that again. We haven't mastered the art of singleness. We have not mastered the art of being single, but yet we're trying to master the art of being in a relationship. That's where the struggle comes in. Now, that's a little tough little hard to accept, because it's like, what you mean master the art of being single? Well, if you haven't mastered the art of being single, you haven't become a whole person. And if you have not become a whole person and you banking on getting into a relationship, people say it's 50-50 in relationships. No, it's 100-100 in relationships. You got to be 100, they got to be 100, and then y'all bring it together. But if we haven't mastered the art of being single, see, when you master the art of being single, that's when you become 100. And then the other party, they master the art of being single, they become 100. And then now bring that 100 together. But instead, we come into the relationship with 50, The other one got about 25. And we try to bring that together. And that's the reason why we having the challenges that we're having. That's why we're having the struggles that we have. You know, and you would say, well, LP, nobody's perfect. Okay, I get that. Once you realize that nobody's perfect, once you realize that you ain't 100, and you realize that your partner ain't 100, when y'all come together, you know, because you ain't 100 and they ain't 100, you're gonna have relationship challenges. So when the relationship challenges come, are you ready and willing to weather the storm? Or are you just gonna jump into it and get needs met, try to get needs met, and after you get into the relationship and you're not getting needs met, now you on to the next one? That's the repetitive cycle that we're experiencing. We're experiencing that cycle. And this is the reason why you have people, you know, the divorce rate due to infidelity is through the roof, because we have people come into the marriage with a mindset of getting needs met. And because the need not getting met, or because they come and they realize that the person is not 100, even though they not 100, when I say 100, I'm talking about complete whole in their singleness. They get into the marriage because they not whole, they're not 100. They mad, they feel like they've been let down, they got the short end of the stick, and they leave. And they go on to the next one. Because they go on to the next one to try to get needs met. They go on to the next one to try to put they 25% with somebody else's maybe 50% or 40%. You know what I'm saying? So we got to take it back to the essential part of being a master in your singleness. Now, as a believer, okay, it's not for everybody. As a believer, all right, we have to come to that place of being 100 in our singleness. You know, so how do I become 100 in my singleness, LP? Whenever you are in that single place, whenever you're not in the relationship, you have to take that time in your singleness. You have to take that time to make sure your concern is in the right direction. All right. What do I mean by saying you make sure my concern is in the right direction? Let's look at the scriptures. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And we're going to start at verse 32. All right, verse 32 says, I would like you to be free from concern. All right. He said, I want you to be free from concern. All right. He said, an unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife. And his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or a virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. Now, look at that. Look at the concerns of an unmarried man. What did he say that the concerns of an unmarried man should be? It should be concerning the things of the Lord and how to please the Lord. And an unmarried woman should be concerned about the things of the Lord and how to please the Lord. So this is the problem. The problem that we run into is this. In our singleness, we ain't stunned about the things of the Lord. In our singleness, we ain't trying to please the Lord. You get what I'm saying? We're not focused on God's business. We're not focused on our divine purpose. We're not focused on what God put us on this earth to do. We're not focused on those things. And because we're not focused on those things, we get into the relationship. When we're now in the relationship, we're consumed with trying to get needs met or trying to please our spouse or our partner. And we left God's work undone. So because we left God's work undone, we are experiencing challenges in our personal lives for no other reason but because we're not doing what God created us to do. So because we're not doing what God created us to do, we're not functioning properly. And when something is not functioning properly, it is malfunctioning. And when something is malfunctioning, it is bound to self-destruct. All right, let me say that one more time. Because we're not functioning in God's purpose for our lives, we're not functioning properly. And because we're not functioning properly, we are malfunctioning. And when something is malfunctioning, it is bound to self-destruct. So we got a lot of self-destruction going on in our relationships for no other reason but because we didn't start it off right. How was we supposed to start it off right? It said, an unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Before you got into the relationship, your focus should have been on doing the Lord's affairs. Whenever our focus is on the Lord's affairs, whenever we're doing what the Lord told us to do, whatever that purpose and that plan that God has for us, when we're focused on that, he said it should be on the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of the world, how he can please his wife, and his interests are divided. So, as a married man, your interests should be divided. How to please the Lord, how to please your spouse. How to please your Lord, how to please your spouse. How to please your Lord, how to please your spouse. Well, what if your focal point never was on doing the affairs of the Lord and pleasing the Lord? What if that was never your intentions? So you get into the relationship, and again, a lot of time we get in relationships not to meet needs, but we go into relationships trying to get needs met. You see how that is? You see the psychology behind that? So we go into the relationship, we trying to get needs met. And as soon as our needs are not getting met, there's challenges, there's issues, there's trouble. So watch this. If your focal point was never to please the Lord, but you jumped into the relationship to get needs met, as soon as those needs are not met, you'll be willing to go get those needs met elsewhere. You see the psychology behind that? You see how we get into the challenges and you get what I'm saying? People don't just wake up in the morning and say, you know what? I just want to be a low down dirty dog and I just want to go against my commitment to my relationship. People don't just wake up in the morning thinking that way. It's because, again, they went into the relationship trying to get needs met. As soon as those needs are not met, immediately I got to focus on what I need to do to get that need met. As opposed to being a person established, becoming a whole person, becoming a 100 person, focused on, up front, focused on the affairs of the Lord, doing what the Lord created us to do. And then we get into the relationship. That's been our focal point over here. Pleasing the Lord, doing what the Lord told us to do. And then we go, look what it, because remember it said, and his interests are divided, meaning he has an interest to please the Lord. He has an interest to please his spouse. But if that interest of pleasing the Lord was never there, if there happened to be an opportunity to do something that's outlandish, to do something that's out of character, to do something that's not for the best, it's not the best thing for our partner, we'll be willing to do it. Why? Because we didn't have an upfront interest in the things of the Lord. So our interests are not divided. Pleasing the Lord, pleasing our spouse. Pleasing the Lord, pleasing our spouse. That's not there because we focused on getting a need met. But see, whenever you open up with doing what God created us to do, doing whatever it is that the Lord wants us to do, and when we do that, we please the Lord. Because our focal point is pleasing the Lord. Whenever we get into this relationship, whenever there's the opportunity for us to feel like our needs are not being met, because again, let me say this one more time. Whenever our focal point is on the affairs of the Lord, we're learning God's culture. We're learning how God functions and how God deals with people. So if I'm doing what God created me to do and what He called me to do, and I'm seeking to please the Lord, I'm learning how to operate like the Lord. How does the Lord operate? All right. For God so loved the world, He did what? Gave His only begotten Son. Jesus said, it's my Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. What did He tell you? He said, give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give it to your bosom. Give, and it shall be given to you. So that right there could include love. That right there could, you get what I'm saying? Respect, honor, all those different things. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. So watch this. If you have learned, because you started out trying to please the Lord, doing the affairs of the Lord, you started out there. So you get into the relationship, and you get into the relationship of meeting needs and giving love, because you learned that whenever you started out here. So you get into the relationship, and the focal point, give. Give what? Love. Give what? Honor. Give what? Respect. Give what? You get what I'm saying? So when that's your focal point ain't about you getting needs met. But if you didn't start out here minding the things of the Lord and seeking to please the Lord, you're not learning the culture that the Lord have established in the earth. All you know is get needs met. So you go into the relationship trying to get a need met. Come on, man. It ain't rocket science. It's not rocket science. That's the reason why we struggle the way we do in our relationships. Because we go into the relationships with a get a needs met mentality. You get what I'm saying? That's a very, and I'm gonna tell you that there's serious benefits in us understanding that concept. Because when you understand that concept, then you present yourself in your relationship. You present yourself as an individual, because everybody wants to be loved. And so when you get in a relationship, you want to be a good lover. You want to be a good lover. See, when we think of that term, being a good lover, immediately we think sex. We think sex. We equate love to sex. And that's a very unfortunate thing that we equate love to sex. I mean, we even call sex making love. You see what I'm saying? like because you have sex, you're gonna make love. No. That's just a term to have. So we want to become ultimately a good lover in our relationships. And the only way we can become a good lover in our relationships, because love is what love what does. And so we have to be we can't go into our relationship trying to get needs met. We have to be able to go into our relationship attempting to meet needs. Now that's on both sides. Both sides. But the only way you're going to do that is if you come into the relationship as a whole person. And many of us got into our relationships, we were not a whole person. Let's be honest. Let's be real. We were not a whole person when we got into our relationship. And that's the reason why we have the challenges that we have. We were not whole. And we went into those relationships seeking to get needs met. We went into those relationships with a mentality of, what about me? I want you to think about that. Think about that. Think about that. Whenever you having challenges with your in your relationship, I want you to think about how much that comes up in your mind. Well, what about me? 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 Think about how much that comes up in our mind. And the reason why that comes up in our mind so much is because we did not go into our relationship properly. Now, I'm not speaking down on nobody, you know what I'm saying? I'm just telling you that's the reality of it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking down on nobody, because that, unfortunately, that's how I went into my relationship. That's how I went into my relationship. I wasn't ready. That's how I went into my marriage. I wasn't ready. It was, you know what I'm saying? I had only been, you know what I'm saying? My mind had been in left field. Already my mind had been in left field for 20 years. For 20 straight years, my mind was in left field. All right? Up until year 2000. 2001, I gave my life to the Lord. All right? So 2001, I'm going hard for God. 2002, I'm going hard for God. 2003, I meet my wife. 2004, I got married to my wife. So I've been jacked up for 20 years. Do you honestly believe that my mind was effectively renewed between 2001 and 2003 when I met my wife? No. No, not at all. Not at all. Mine still just as messed up. You know what I'm saying? And here it is, I come into a relationship. And I got into that relationship seeking to get needs met. And as a result, we struggled and we had challenges. You get what I'm saying? And still to this day, I ain't got it all together. So because I ain't got it all together, those areas have caused tension in my marriage. You get what I'm saying? So this is the reason why there has to be a concentrated effort that, let's look at it. Let's look at the scriptures again. Verse 32. He said, an unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. I'm talking about this has to be a lifelong commitment as a single person. How to do the will of the Lord and how to please the Lord. Then once we come into the marriage, we have the right mentality. Now, I will say, and you know, all glory to God, we've been able to overcome a lot of the challenges that we've gone through for no other reason but because of my commitment that I started out with. My commitment that I started out with to please the Lord concerning the Lord's affairs. Because of my focal point on the Lord's affairs and pleasing the Lord, there's certain responses that I did not give my wife when we had challenges. There's certain things that I had a fleshly desire to do that I did not do because of my commitment over here. Because look what he said. He said, but a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife, and his interests are divided. Because he started out focusing on the affairs of the Lord. And then it transitioned to focusing on seeking out ways to please the spouse. And it says his interests are divided. So because of that commitment over here to the Lord, to minding the Lord's affairs, and my commitment to my spouse, to love my spouse, to honor my spouse, to seek out ways to please my spouse. So whenever things are rocky over here with my spouse, because of my commitment over here, there's certain things that I'm not going to do. There's certain negative behaviors that I'm not going to exemplify because of my commitment over here. But again, a lot of times we get into our relationships, there's no commitment to the Lord over here. I was talking about on my Facebook page this morning, I was saying, I said, hold on, what did I say? If the man didn't have to change to get you, he's not going to change to keep you. And that's the reality. So who are our motivational factors to making change? If our motivational factors to making change is man, but not God, that's kind of you know what I'm saying? But when the objective of our change, like we want to change because, okay, we have to renew our minds according to God, according to pleasing God, there's certain things that we have to change. Whenever we do so on this end, dealing with God, when we switch that thing over here to our relationships, you feel me? It's easy for us to make change and our motive is right. You feel me? Because if it's just the focal point is, oh, I'm just going to change for you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, think about it. You know what I'm saying? People get involved in unequally yoked relationships. And, you know what I mean? Unequally yoked relation. What I mean by that is, you know, you get involved in a relationship and you committed to God, but the individual that you linking up with, their commitment to God is not like yours. You feel me? You got sisters like, well, you know, well, I'm gonna go ahead and marry him, you know, cause I mean, he said he gonna start going to church when after we get married, he gonna start going to church. Well, you know, he going upside my head, but when we get married, he ain't gonna go upside my head no more. You know what I'm saying? You know, or you dealing with this sister, you know what I'm saying? You know this sister is she got some serious challenges going on, but you know you gonna go ahead and marry her because you know you think you gonna change her. That is the biggest deception ever. You know what I'm saying? But people keep falling for it. You know what I mean? People keep falling for it. And you know, it starts off I mean, I want to harp on this. It starts off with the issue of dealing with our singleness first. You know what I'm saying? We have to deal with our singleness. And whenever we are in our singleness, as the scripture says, an unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. And it says that an unmarried woman is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. So, with that being said, man, I mean, we got to focus on that the first objective, the first thing that we should be focusing on. And that first thing that we should be focusing on is minding the Lord's affairs. And because we haven't made that a commitment when we get into our relationship, we have serious serious relationship challenges. Well, that's all, man. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, man. I really enjoyed today, man. I hope you enjoyed, man. Hey, we went in today. We went in today. But look, that's it, man, for the Trap Plan Radio. Thank you so very much for tuning in. I want you to be blessed and stay blessed. Holla at your boy. Yep. And that's it, man. Dude. That's the real. That's the realest as real can be, man. That's serious. You know what I'm saying? It all goes back to, you know, us having it. We have to have that focal point. Our focal point has to be, you know, as the scripture says, it says an unmarried man and an unmarried woman, their concern is the Lord's affairs and how they can please the Lord. That has to be the first objective. The focal point has to be concerning the things of God, in doing what the Lord is concerned about, the Lord's affairs, focusing on the Lord's affairs, seeking out how to please the Lord first. Once that is established, then when you get over here in this relationship, you'll understand the nature of God. Because when you spend time with God, you start acting like him. The nature of God, when you spent that time with God, minding his affairs, God began to, the essence of God and his nature began to rub off on you. And whenever it began to rub off on you, that's when you start functioning like him. So what is it? How did God function? And God so loved the world, he gave. Jesus said, it is my Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Then Jesus taught you by illustration. He told you, give, and it shall be given to you. So if you learn the nature of God, now when you get into your relationship, you have the capability of giving, as opposed to, because most people get into relationship and say, hey, my brother, you got to go deep like this on a time when we not working and we can really focus on the subject. I'm working and working down and looking down at my phone. Thank you, man. I appreciate it, man. For real. But when you know what I'm saying, when you get time, man, you go back and look at it. You know, I just want to go ahead and archive it. You know what I'm saying? I came in early to go ahead and get this done so it can be archived. You can go back and look at it again. But, you know, man, you know, I'm glad you enjoyed that. You feel me? But yeah, once we get into the relationship, because we have gained the nature of God and we begin to function under his influence and his essence, whenever we get into the relationship, now we can have pure, unadulterated, untainted agape love for our spouse. Because whenever we spent that time with God, minding the Lord's affairs and seeking to please the Lord was exemplifying his agape unconditional love with us. So now when we get into this relationship, now we can give that unconditional love to our spouse. And we have a mentality of giving, as opposed to always trying to get. You get what I'm saying? But if you have a carnal mind that's, you know, you wasn't worried about the things of the Lord. If your focal point was just always just, you know what I'm saying, you trying to get needs met, when you get into that relationship, you just trying to get needs met, you know, and that's an unfortunate reality, you know. So that's neither here nor there, man. I'm finished with that, but I'm about to go ahead and jump into this other part. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this one, and after I end this one, I'm gonna go live again. You know what I'm saying? You know. So, but glad y'all enjoyed, man. Thank y'all so very much for tuning in. You know what I'm saying? You be blessed, stay blessed, and holla at your boy.